Well, we promised you updates on some big Saints stories from around the NFL Combine, so let's get to some updates on some big stories from around the NFL Combine. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert, credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network. And on today's episode, we're going to be breaking down a bunch of different combine rumors, news, things that we're hearing. We'll call it buzz and nuggets that we're getting here from the NFL Combine, as my good friend John Hendricks would say. We're going to take a look at Dennis Allen speaking on Klint Kubiak as well in our conversation with him. And we're also going to be taking a look at some players to watch at this year's Combine, a couple on the offensive side and a couple on the defensive side. We appreciate you very much for being an everydayer here on the Locked On Saints podcast and for making us your first listen of the day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more, and it's even easier now, especially if you're a new customer. You're going to be able to get $150 in bonus bets by simply winning any $5 bet. Just head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, we got a lot to get to when it comes to the rumors that are going on here in Indianapolis that include some updates on what's going on with some big players that could be on their way out, as well as some big name players that are staying in, the move to the West Coast when it comes to training camp, and much more. So let's go ahead and break it down. Some of the biggest things that folks have been wondering about are the departures of potential players like Michael Thomas, Jameis Winston, Andrus Peat, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill. So let me give you a quick in and out in terms of what we're beginning to expect based upon what we're hearing here in Indianapolis. Number one, I would not expect Michael Thomas to be back for the New Orleans Saints in 2024. As we broke down a couple of days ago, in his contract, it is specifically designed to designate him as a post-June 1 cut on the first day of free agency, which would save them a little bit of cap space as well, at least in 2024. Expect that to happen. Don't expect the tides to change when it comes to Michael Thomas. He's going to get his opportunity to get another chance at a bounce back, but it sounds like it's going to be happening in a different uniform. Another player that I wouldn't be surprised to see at least get the opportunity to test free agency is Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is one of the players that I actually asked Dennis Allen about when we spoke to him yesterday. I'm going to roll a little bit of that, a little bit of our conversation later on when we look at Klint Kubiak. But one of the things that Dennis Allen laid out there was that he knows that Jameis Winston said that he wants an opportunity to start in the league and that opportunity is not going to be here for him in New Orleans. I think that that's pretty telling that kind of made its way to, the coaching staff and everything like that. I would very much expect Jameis Winston to at least get the opportunity to test free agency and see if he can indeed find that starting job or a role that better suits him elsewhere outside of the New Orleans Saints, which is unfortunate because he loves the city of New Orleans. He loves this team, but it seems like, again, as we broke down the other day, despite all of that, if the situation's not right, the situation isn't right. Now let's talk about a couple players that the situation is right for. Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, expect them to be a part of the plans going into 2024 with Klint Kubiak. Both of those guys, I imagine, being big selling points for Klint Kubiak. And it seems that there's a lot of excitement around what they could look like in the Saints' upcoming new offensive system. So I don't expect either of those guys to go away. We saw the restructure to Cam Jordan's contract this morning, $1.5 million saved there. Both of those guys, Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara, are restructure candidates. More so Alvin Kamara than Taysom Hill. We'll see how the Saints go about his contract, but I wouldn't be surprised if they either don't touch it or just talk to him about the potential for a pay cut there, or maybe even restructure. Who knows? It doesn't seem like there's too much concern about his contract as we ask around here in Indianapolis. So I would expect both of those players to not only be on the team, but fully in the mix of the new offensive system for New Orleans moving forward. And I think that that's a really, really good thing because I think both of those players have a really, really solid, there's got to be a really solid vision in terms of how they can fit in a wide zone offense. It just makes a ton of sense how both of those guys would be able to fit in and help out. So looking forward to seeing exactly what that's going to look like. But I'll tell you what, I'm not the only one. It's clear that the offensive staff is very excited about these guys as well. With the loss of Michael Thomas, I would probably put possession receiver firmly in the mix for something going on with the New Orleans Saints in free agency, right? Like something that they key in on, a big time need that they want to go out there and get. That doesn't mean that they're probably going to go out there and spend, a ton of money on the first day. In fact, I wouldn't expect them to be players in the first day or two of free agency. I expect another patient approach to free agency this coming season. And it makes a ton of sense. You look at some of the top possession receivers that are out there that would have been on the market. T. Higgins, expected to get the franchise tag in Cincinnati. Michael Pittman, expected to work out a long-term deal in Indianapolis, although a tag might be used to help facilitate and buy more time to get that deal done. These are just things that we know about some of these big-time possession receivers. So maybe, guys like Tyler Boyd, maybe some of the other guys that are a little bit, closer to the middle realm or the middle situation when it comes to the Saints, or when it comes to like being available in free agency, right? Sort of those mid-tier free agents, if you will. Expect that to kind of be where the Saints go shopping there. And I wouldn't be surprised if pass rusher is another one of those positions that they go and target. I told y'all we got a lot for you today as we continue through here. I want to give you a quick health update too. One of the other big questions this offseason was Ryan Ramczyk and the health of, the knee, dealing with surgery, potential surgery, things like that. Dennis Allen told us two things yesterday. He told us straight up that Ryan Ramczyk had a minor knee surgery to clean up his knee a bit, right? Clean up the knee. But then also that the only player that's not expected to be ready for training camp at this time, health-wise, is linebacker Nephi Sewell. So what that tells you is that Ryan Ramczyk is expected to be back and ready to go for training camp, meaning that he should be out there week 1 on the field as well, and that he just had the minor surgery. That tends to mean, just by putting 2 and 2 together there, that maybe the idea of the major knee surgery that might have been in line for Ryan Ramczyk, that something changed in terms of that outlook partway through the end of the season versus after the season when they really got an opportunity to look at it. So some good news there when it comes to Ryan Ramczyk, when it comes to New Orleans Saints offensive line. And that if that's the case and he's back out there week 1, that takes you from having 3 different spots that you have question marks at to 3 different spots that you're absolutely sure of, and then figuring things out at left tackle and left guard moving forward. So that's a pretty big one there to be able to know at this point that, Ryan Ramczyk's expected to not only be back, but expected to be back in training camp and therefore ready for week 1. The Saints are effectively, for sure, moving training camp out to California. Everybody seems to be kind of on the same page about that. Doesn't seem to be any type of ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm sure that there's a lot of details to work out in terms of the logistics of that and the deal to get that done, all that other stuff. But it does look like there's no change kind of imminent when it comes to that the Saints will be having their training camp out on the West Coast. So good news there. All right, finally, I do want to discuss Marshon Lattimore as well. Marshon Lattimore getting his base salary reduced before the season was over, turned to converted, turned into a roster bonus that doesn't set in until the week before the season, looking like they were trying to buy themselves some time to maybe figure out a trade there. I don't know if that trade's coming at this point, and I wouldn't be surprised if the boost in salary cap aided that situation. So we'll keep a closer eye on it and sort of figure out all of the way that it goes. But the way that I would look at it is that there's no timeline on whatever decision that they make. Dennis Allen did say of Marshon Lattimore, quote, he's a part of this football team, and mention how he could help the team going forward. So I wouldn't be so quick to jump to the conclusion that Marshon Lattimore is going to be traded away or that Marshon Lattimore is no longer going to be a part of this football team in 2024. So boom, there you go. Michael Thomas, Jameis Winston, Marshon Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, a little bit of Ryan Ramczyk news, training camp news, all of that in 8 minutes? Booyah, there you go. You got all the rumors, everything that you need to know so far. And we'll continue to break these things down more in depth as well. But the next thing I want to get to here as we continue on we'll continue to break that down for shows, as we go through the offseason here. But the next thing that I really want to take a look at here is what Dennis Allen had to say about Klint Kubiak and how that system will impact New Orleans going into 2024. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp Therapy Online has been incredible for me. It can be incredible for you as well. And one of the things that I always kind of think about when it comes to therapy, and I think that we always kind of jump to, is sort of this idea that therapy is all about trying to fix things that are quote unquote wrong. Well, there's not necessarily anything wrong. You're just trying to address and figure things out, all that. And sometimes it's about reinforcing some of the good things that are going on. Like if you had an extra hour in your day, what would you spend that extra hour doing, right? You'd want to spend that extra hour doing something constructive. So find out what matters to you so that you can do more of it with the help of BetterHelp. If you've been thinking about therapy, please give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suit your schedule as well. You take a quick questionnaire. They'll pair you up with a therapist that has some kind of experience in your background and everything. And if that's not a good fit, don't worry. You can actually change therapists at any time. No additional charge at all. So go check them out today, because if you want to learn more about what makes you happy, you should go with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The excitement around Klint Kubiak continues to build, and it's clear that Dennis Allen has been following this opportunity for a very long time, and now he's got the opportunity to bring effectively a guy that sounds like his guy into the building to revamp that offensive system, so things should trend in the right direction in 2024. We're going to hear more from Dennis Allen here in just a moment. We appreciate you very much for being an everydayer here on the show. Don't forget to go and check out as well the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 YouTube stream. Everything you need to know from the Combine from all 14 hosts that are out here covering the Combine here in Indianapolis. So make sure you go and check it out. We're running all of it all throughout the weekend and everything as well. So go and check it out today. Locked On Sports Today on YouTube for the 24/7 national sports stream, the first of its kind. So when it comes to Dennis Allen, obviously one of the biggest questions that we got to ask him going into our media session with him on Wednesday was about the new offensive system, bringing in Klint Kubiak, all of that. So I want to play for you some of the comments that he had about Klint Kubiak, his familiarity with not only Kubiak, but his father, Gary Kubiak, and why he feels that this is going to be a good fit for the New Orleans Saints going into 2024. Here's what Dennis Allen had to say, and then we'll break it down here on the other side.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I would say this, initially I'd say I've kind of followed the Kubiak family. Gary played at Texas A&M, so hell, I grew up watching him play football. He was coaching at A&M when I was playing. Klint was probably running around out on the field at that time. And so I've kind of followed that family. I followed that system of football. I've been against that system of football. And I think it's really difficult to defend. And so that was kind of the initial thought that drew me to Klint and that system. And just getting an opportunity to visit with him and then doing my background research and people that I've talked to that have worked with him or he's worked for. This guy is he's highly intelligent. He's creative. And he's a grinder. He's gonna work to find the answers and the solutions. And so I'm excited about what I think he can bring to our organization.
So a couple of things that I want to highlight here from that. First of all, the excitement of being able to find the answers and bring the right things to this offense. That's so key to me. I think, and I highlighted in an episode, I think yesterday, where we're kind of discussing like, what is that Klint Kubiak system going to look like? What does it mean for some of these players, things like that? One of the things that we were looking at and all that is kind of where do people fit in and what is it that will make the biggest impact for the New Orleans Saints over on the offensive side? And obviously motion's a big part of that. Under center, play action's a big part of that. The quick passing game is a huge part of it as well, that I think is actually kind of the biggest part of it, because the quick passing game helps your offensive line, it helps your quarterback, gets the ball in the hands of your playmakers, all that stuff. So there's obviously a lot of value that comes with that. So I really look at that as being sort of one of the key selling points for this New Orleans Saints offense and for what it's going to be or should look like, or what they plan for it to look like in 2024. The other thing about this too is that everything is kind of centered around the idea of maximizing Derek Carr. And that's not out of the ordinary. Like, feel however you might about Derek Carr, feel however you might about any individual quarterback out there. The fact of the matter is that every offense is built to try to maximize its quarterback. does it feel like last year's offense maximized the quarterback? Go back 2 years before that, even looking at Jameis as the starter 2 years ago with Pete Carmichael calling plays, did it look like the offense was built to maximize Jameis Winston? No, like it's never felt that, or it hasn't felt that way since Sean Payton left. And so now when I look at what this New Orleans Saints version of the Kubiak Shanahan system, whatever that's going to be, when I think about what that looks like, everything sort of lends itself to the idea that it's going to be built to maximize the quarterback in Derek Carr. And I think that that's the way that you have to go when it comes to, bringing a new offensive system, all those other things. It was also really interesting to hear him kind of talk about how long he's been following the Kubiaks, right? Watching Gary Kubiak play at Texas A&M. Dennis Allen was at Texas A&M as well. Klint Kubiak coached at Texas A&M while Dennis Allen played at Texas A&M. He mentioned, Klint might have been a little kid running around and things like that. Like this goes so far back. It's kind of this wild kind of story in terms of like where it all started, right? Like how it started, how it's going kind of thing. We'll see how it's going once it all gets started, but it is very, very interesting just to sort of see like the trajectory of all of it and the way that it's gone for them. So it's a cool addition to the plot, right? It's a cool subplot to the main plot, but the main plot that we can't lose is ultimately, does this make the New Orleans Saints a better football team? And that's what has to be the focus. That's got to be the focus right off the bat. And so cool, and one of the things that you can kind of bank a little bit too is Dennis Allen has coached against this system time and time and time again as a defensive coach. And so for him to identify that system as one that he wanted to bring to New Orleans does kind of carry some weight, doesn't it? Right? Like that's kind of the harder system, one of the hardest systems that he's had to go against, one of the hardest systems that he's had to stop or try to stop in the NFL. So what did he do? He went out and got it and brought it here to New Orleans. That's kind of dope. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a cool way to go about it. So look, I don't want to like gas it up too much because it might not work, right? You might show up in 2024 for a game and the offense might be flat. Things might not work and all that kind of stuff. That's just what it is. But just looking at the mentality and the logistics that went behind the decision to bring in Klint Kubiak. And he also spoke very highly of some of the other coaches as well, and things like that they're bringing, like the rest of the coaching staff as a whole. He mentioned everything. We've asked around a bit. People are very excited about Andrew Janocko. People are very excited about Keith Williams, Coach Dub, the wide receivers coach that kind of brings this blend of like familiarity and relatability with also just like tough love and coaching and all that. And when you've got like this young stable of wide receivers, both of those things can go a really long way for you. So like people are very excited about that as well. So even outside of just hearing Dennis Allen talk about it, I can tell you that people that are looking at the changes that the New Orleans Saints made on their offensive coaching staff, the hires that they've made, that people looking from the outside in are really like in the NFL ranks are really complimentary of what it is that the New Orleans Saints have done as well. So it's cool just to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and get a little bit of a glimpse into what that decision was. So again, we'll have to wait to see if it actually works and everything. But as of right now, just looking at the why of why the decisions were made gives you some pretty good insight in terms of like what that is and why that was made and how the rest of the NFL landscape is kind of looking at it. All right, coming up next, let's dive into some of the combine players to watch. I'm going to give you 2 on offense, 2 on defense as drills get started today. We'll have that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more with America's #1 sports book. And right now, they don't want you scoring any touchdowns now that the season's over, but you could definitely get some buckets when it comes to the official sports betting partner of Locked On over at FanDuel. Because right now, especially as a new customer, it doesn't get any better than this. $150 in bonus bets you'll win if you simply win any $5 bet. You can go and find a super heavy favorite for a game, a money line, an over, under, a player prop, whatever it is, any $5 bet as a new customer will net you $150 in bonus bets. $150 if your bet wins, no matter what. That's pretty cool. It's like 30-1 odds on something that's, otherwise got massive odds in your favor if you're a new customer. So make sure you go and check them out today. It's FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can check out the quick bets, the live same game parlays, and much more. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Make every moment more with the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, family, got two players on each side of the ball that I want you to really pay attention to over the course of the NFL Combine, workouts and otherwise. We're going to be breaking it down here as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. We appreciate you very much. Don't forget, it is your team every day. So we will be back tomorrow before I catch the flight out of here, out of Indianapolis, and head back to New Orleans. There will be a brand new episode up for you. And we're going to be taking a look at more when it comes to some of these drills and what to expect over the course of the weekend, all that. But I want to put two players on each side of the ball on your radar early before the workouts and all that stuff get to us here starting later on this evening. So let's break that down. Appreciate you very much for being here. All right, so let's start over on the offensive side of the football because we know that is where the team kind of has the most needs, I think is fair to say. So the first person that I really want to highlight here is sort of a versatile player that you're going to be able to really get into the mix a lot of different ways and, line up in the backfield, line up out wide, all those other things. You've heard me talk about him here on the show if you're an everydayer, and that's Purdue halfback Tyrone Tracy. Now, I call him Purdue halfback because that's the position that he played at Purdue, but he was also an Iowa wide receiver. And when we think about these Shanahan offenses and things like that, one of the things that we can't lose sight of is positionlessness. So you think about the Deebo Samuels of the world, things like that, right? How do they get into the mix? You can put them in the backfield, but if you're not handing the ball off to them, if they're not actually getting the ball out of the backfield, it doesn't have as much of an impact. But when you've got a guy that you can motion out to wide receiver as well, or even convert to wide receiver, he's like 6'1", 203 pounds. He's not a bad size for a wide out at all. So if you're able to get him as somebody that's involved as a pass catcher, motion him into the backfield, line him up in the backfield right off the snap, all of a sudden he becomes a lot more dangerous for you because he's truly utilized and experienced in both of those areas. I think they'll have to do this or should be doing this with Alvin Kamara quite a bit as well. Taysom Hill's a big part of that. But guys like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, you can put them in the backfield, but are you really going to hand the ball off to them? We don't know, right? So until we actually start to see that, building a guy or having a guy that can come in and kind of already knows how to do both of those things could be very appealing for the New Orleans Saints and their new offensive system. So he's definitely one that I would watch out for over on the offensive side. He'll be, doing the combine and like all these other things. The other player, and I kind of got in between here, so I'm going to cheat. I'm actually going to give you like two and a half in a way. The other player that kind of fits that mold is another guy that we've talked about a bunch on the show, and that's, of course, Malachi Corley, the wide receiver from Western Kentucky University. He's been a little bit more of a screen guy, hasn't gotten a ton of opportunity as a runner. So you'd have to build that out when he gets to the NFL, but definitely has the skill set to maybe be a little bit more of a versatile piece for you. I debated big time on who to break down as the other prospect here, but I'm going to stick to my guns, and I'm going to go with Theo Johnson, the tight end out of Penn State. I don't know. Well, you know what? I'm actually going to watch him because he's going to be a lot of fun. But look, I don't know if the Saints are going to draft a tight end. I don't know if tight end's like on their board in terms of something that they really, really feel is like a need or that they need to burn draft capital on and stuff like that. So I do say like watch out for him. But really the guy that I'm super excited about is Olu Fashanu, the offensive tackle he's out of Penn State. Sorry, I always get him and Sua Mataia. Both those guys come from either Penn State or BYU, and I tend to get those mixed up, as many of you have seen me do before here on the show. So I would say watch out for those guys, but Olu Fashanu in particular, he's going to be very impressive. I mean, he's got everything: height, weight, size, length in terms of like arm length and everything like that. And now he's going to show you some of the athletic ability that he has. Sua Mataia, actually, Kingsley Sua Mataia out of BYU, another very fun one to watch. His athleticism's off the charts as well. So really just kind of like that offensive tackle group is worth your attention here throughout Combine Weekend. Also worth your attention this Combine Weekend, without a doubt, is UCLA defensive end Laiatu Latu. Listen, I watched this guy in Mobile, seen, the tape, everything. He's got a big week ahead too with the medical checks. That's a big one. Remember, he was medically retired for a little while. He like went off to try to be like a firefighter for a second and everything too. And so he's got some stuff to basically kind of prove about his health, and that makes Combine Weekend really big for him. But if you just want to watch somebody that is almost flawless technique-wise as a pass rusher, Laiatu Latu, UCLA defensive end, is the guy to watch out for. Now, there's a few of these different, defensive ends that are going to be impressive. Dallas Turner is going to be one of those guys, of course. Jared Verse is going to be a ton of fun, all that. But just if you just want to see what pass rushing is supposed to look like coming out of the collegiate level, obviously there's still some ceiling left there. There's still some things to learn getting to the NFL and all that. We get it. But man, he's impressive. This really, really impressive. So I'm very much looking forward to watching him. And then, you know, sticking on the defensive line for my second guy is Illinois defensive tackle Jason Newton. I mean, big, disruptive, fast, quick, good hands. Like, he just kind of checks all the boxes down in the trenches. You know, there's some good linebackers to keep an eye on as well. Peyton Wilson, Edgerrin Cooper. Secondary could be a lot of fun. I wish Cooper DeJean was testing, but he's not going to be testing the Iowa corner. Quinyon Mitchell could be a lot of fun to watch and all that stuff too. But I just think about like the needs that the New Orleans Saints have. And for me on the defensive side, it all feels like the trenches, maybe safety, but really feels like the trenches for me. So guys like Laiatu Latu and Jason Newton, who's, you know, one's the edge rusher, one's on the interior, could be a ton of fun to watch. So I'm really, really excited to see really both of those guys are the ones that stand out the most to me. And so I'll be watching them pretty closely here throughout the weekend, and you should as well. You know, since we've got a little bit of extra time here, the other things that I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing and learning throughout all this is just seeing more, learning more about the private visits, the formal visits, all that stuff. Here, there was a report that came out about Jaden Daniels, the LSU quarterback, meeting with the New Orleans Saints. I don't think that really signifies much in terms of first round quarterbacks. You know, got to remember the historical record thing. We actually asked Jeff Ireland about that yesterday too. Just the historical record stuff of getting a look at somebody, and if they hit the market 4 or 5 years, 8 years, 10 years down the road, then you have something to refer back to from kind of an origin point. Or, you know, you meet with these guys and all of a sudden somebody falls all the way down to 14. And in fact, actually, Jeff Ireland said he doesn't expect Jaden Daniels to fall to 14, which maybe gives you a little bit of an indicator that they're ready to pick at 14, first of all, but also that like the rest of the NFL in terms of scouting and everything like that sees that Jaden Daniels is probably going to go off the board pretty early. And so I don't think he's going to be in the cards for New Orleans. I don't think that first round quarterback is in the card for New Orleans at all. Or I shouldn't say it's not in the cards. It's just not likely, I think is what I would say. And so we'll see the way that it's all going to kind of break out. But the visit stuff is always a lot of fun. I think we can take more indication from like the top 30 visits later on in the draft process than we take from these like combine conversations and stuff like that. And remember, you know, the Saints in a couple of different occasions, they've gone off and drafted guys that they never talked to, like they never really met with and everything. I'm trying to think about some examples of that. I think Davenport was one of those guys. And then there was somebody very recently that was also one of those guys too, maybe A.T. Perry. And so like, that's just kind of a part of the process, is that sometimes you take guys that you haven't sat down with or anything, and that, you know, you talk to everybody around them instead of talking to them or something like that. And so I think you want to be prepared in case there's a surprise and somebody falls down. But outside of that, for the most part, you're doing due diligence, excuse me. And I think that Jaden Daniels meeting was a good example of exactly that, due diligence. All right. That wraps up our quick preview of some of the combine stuff. We're going to get to more as well. I've got several more players to discuss, several more players to look at, and of course, some NFL news going on around the league that we're hearing too that could impact the New Orleans Saints. We're going to get all of that into tomorrow's episode before I head back to New Orleans. Appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day for your second listen. Locked on Pelicans, Locked on LSU, got you covered as Locked on Louisiana continues to roll along. So we appreciate you very much, as always, making Locked on Saints a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.